Chapter 5. Into the Abyss. Ray's eyes snapped open, and the world around him was wrong. He lay on cold, uneven stone, the air thick with a damp, acrid stench. The dim glow of blue fire flickered along the cavern walls, casting grotesque shadows that twisted like living things. His body ached, his limbs heavy as if he had been submerged in water for days. With a groan, he pushed himself upright. His breath came out in short, visible puffs, freezing cold despite the fact that he had just been in the humid jungles of Mexico. "What the hell?" he muttered, rubbing his temples. He took in his surroundings. Massive stone structures loomed over him, their carvings ancient, jaguar-headed figures snarling from the rock. The ground was littered with bones, some human, some not. Above, the sky was black, void of stars, but the moon, massive and unnaturally bright, hung low in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the landscape. This wasn't the temple. This wasn't Earth. Panic gnawed at his chest, but before he could move, a deep chuckle echoed through the cavern. "Ah, so another one has found their way here." Ray whirled around. A figure stepped from the shadows, tattered conquistador armor hanging loosely over his skeletal frame, patches of rotting flesh barely clinging to his bones. His once proud plumed helmet was caked in filth, the golden trim tarnished. The man grinned, revealing yellowed broken teeth. "Welcome to Xibalba, boy." Ray's muscles tensed, his fists clenching. "Who the hell are you?" The skeletal figure gave a mock bow. "Captain Diego Velasquez, at your service, conqueror of the Yucatan, or, well, I was, a long time ago." His tone turned dry. "Now? I suppose you could call me a permanent resident." Ray took a cautious step back. "Where am I?" Velasquez smirked, his hollow eyes gleaming. "You still don't get it, do you? You're in Xibalba, the underworld, the resting place of souls who have unfinished business." Ray's heartbeat thundered in his chest. "I'm dead?" The conquistador let out a raspy laugh. "Not quite. You, my friend, are different. You're only here because your body's still being used by someone else." Ray's breath hitched. The realization sent a chill down his spine. He wasn't in control anymore. That thing was walking around in his body, doing God knows what. Velasquez watched him carefully. "Ah, so you're his new puppet." Ray's jaw clenched. "You know about him?" The old conquistador's grin faded, his expression darkening. "Oh, I know more than you could imagine." He gestured around them. "Why do you think I'm here? I was a fool. I thought I could claim power beyond my understanding. Tezcatlipoca doesn't give power. He takes, corrupts, twists you into something inhuman." Ray swallowed hard. "Then how do I stop him?" Velasquez studied him for a long moment before sighing. "You're asking the right questions, but you won't like the answer." Ray glared at him. "Try me." The conquistador's skeletal hand curled into a fist. "The mask, the one you found." Ray's brow furrowed. Velasquez continued, his tone grim. "It wasn't made to give him power. It was made to keep him contained." Diego's decayed features twisted into something resembling a smirk. "That mask you carry, it's more than just some relic," he said, gesturing toward Ray's chest as if he could see through dimensions. "It was forged by the hero twins themselves, meant to be a safeguard against Tezcatlipoca's influence, a means to contain him." Ray's brows furrowed. "Contain him? I thought he was a god." Diego let out a dry, hollow laugh. "Even gods can be caged, if you know how." The twins knew that Tezcatlipoca would always hunger for vengeance, for blood, so they created the mask, not to stop him, but to make sure whoever wore it had the power to resist him. Without it, he will take you. Completely. Ray's stomach tightened. "And if I put it on?" Diego's grin faded, his hollow eyes darkening. "Then you become his warden, and his prisoner, or he becomes yours. The mask binds you to him forever. You gain control, but at a cost." Ray exhaled sharply, his mind racing. He barely had time to process what he'd just learned before Diego took a step back. "He's going to call you back soon," the old conquistador muttered. "The gods, especially him, hate human food. It makes them sick." Ray's eyes widened, but before he could speak, everything around him started to shake. The shadows stretched, the ground beneath his feet seemed to melt, and Diego's voice became a distorted echo. Then, the scent of blood, the damp heat of the jungle, the weight of his body returning. Ray gasped as his eyes snapped open. He was back. But the world around him was painted in carnage. Bodies littered the cartel outpost, contorted in agony, their faces frozen in terror. Blood soaked the ground, glistening in the moonlight. The metallic scent of death hung thick in the air. Ray's stomach twisted as he staggered to his feet, his breath uneven. He had no memory of what had happened, no recollection of the slaughter before him. And then inside his head, that dark, mocking voice whispered, "Your body's hungry. Feed it." Ray staggered back, his breath ragged as his heart pounded in his chest. His hands trembled, the weight of the bloodshed around him pressing down like a crushing force. Then, just as suddenly as it had taken hold, he felt it. Something inside him pulling away, a sharp ripping sensation like something clawing its way out of his bones. Tezcatlipoca was leaving him. Ray gasped, falling to one knee as the overwhelming presence peeled itself away. The oppressive grip that had wrapped around his body like a second skin lifted, and for the first time in days his mind felt like his own. His stomach twisted, a deep gnawing hunger clawing at his insides. His muscles felt weak, drained, as if he hadn't eaten in days. "Not now," he muttered, forcing himself upright. His eyes darted across the blood-soaked ground until they locked onto his backpack. His fingers were shaking as he unzipped it. The mask sat inside, cold, unassuming. Yet just looking at it sent a deep primal fear through him. It was the only thing that could keep Tezcatlipoca at bay. He knew it now. "I have to do this. I have to." "No!" The voice exploded inside his skull like thunder, rattling his bones. Tezcatlipoca was still there, lurking beneath the surface, and he knew exactly what Ray was about to do. "You dare?" the god snarled, his fury crackling through Ray's nerves like lightning. "You think that mask will save you? You think you can silence me?" Ray's entire body tensed as the god's presence surged back toward him, trying to seize control again. Shadows coiled around his limbs like blackened chains, tightening with a force that threatened to break him. His vision blurred. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. "You are mine, warrior," Tezcatlipoca roared. "You have tasted power. You will not—" Ray clenched his teeth, forcing his body to move through the crushing weight pressing down on him. With a guttural yell, he grabbed the mask. A violent shock ran through his arms, nearly tearing it from his grip, but he held on. He had to. The shadows fought back, lashing at him, trying to rip the mask away. The ground beneath him trembled as Tezcatlipoca's rage boiled over. "I will not be bound again." Ray slammed the mask onto his face. White-hot pain exploded through his skull. His veins ignited, molten fire pouring through them as the mask fused to his skin. His body convulsed, every nerve screaming in protest as the god's power roared within him, twisting, fighting, then a final pulse. The shadows recoiled, their grip on his body loosening. Tezcatlipoca let out a furious, inhuman growl. "You fool!" the god seethed, his voice dripping with venom. "You think this changes anything? You think you are free?" Ray fell forward, catching himself with shaking hands, gasping for breath. "I will find a way, warrior." Tezcatlipoca's voice was lower now, simmering with restrained fury. "The mask will not protect you forever, and when you slip, when your hunger becomes too great, I will take back what is mine." Ray's fingers dug into the dirt. His entire body was still trembling, the pain lingering deep in his bones. But for the first time since the shrine, the thoughts in his head were his own. He took a slow, shaky breath. "Shut up," he muttered. And for now, Tezcatlipoca did. Ray stumbled forward, his body still trembling from the pain of the fusion. Every breath felt different, heavier, as if something inside him had permanently shifted. He reached up instinctively to rip the mask off, but it wasn't there. His fingers brushed against his skin, smooth yet wrong. His stomach twisted. Frantically, he looked around the ruined cartel outpost, his gaze darting over the bodies sprawled across the jungle clearing. Smoke curled from the remains of a burning supply tent, the flickering fire casting eerie shadows across the blood-stained ground. Then, leaning against the torn fabric of one of the collapsed tents, he saw it. An old dirt-streaked mirror, half buried in the mud. Dread clawed its way up his spine as he stepped closer. The face staring back at him was almost his. But it wasn't. The mask had sunk into his skin, almost absorbed into his very flesh. It was no longer a separate object, but a part of him, its intricate patterns faintly etched into his face like deep ancient scars burned into his flesh. His jawline looked sharper, his features subtly altered, and his eyes, his normal human eyes, had darkened. Shadows swirling faintly in their depths like something alive beneath the surface. Ray exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of a nearby wooden crate. "What the hell did you do to me?" he muttered. A low rumbling chuckle echoed in his mind. "What did I do? No, warrior. This is what you did. Ray clenched his jaw. He had bigger things to worry about. He had no idea how long he's been out. He needed to find his father. Quickly, he yanked up the hood of his jacket, trying to conceal his altered face. He turned toward the jungle path, stepping over the carnage, forcing himself not to look at the bodies Tezcatlipoca had left behind. And where exactly do you think you're going? The god mused, his voice slithering through Ray's mind like thick smoke. To find my father, Ray muttered under his breath, trudging toward the dirt road leading out of the jungle. Ah, yes, the drunk, the disappointment. Ray's hands curled into fists. Shut up. Don't pretend you don't feel it. Tezcatlipoca's voice was smooth, taunting. The hunger, the need, the urge to tear, to break, to take vengeance for all the wrongs done to you. Ray ignored him and kept walking. The journey back to the city was long. He managed to hitch rides from wary truckers, sitting silently in the back of an old pickup as the jungle faded behind him. The closer he got to Mexico City, the more suffocating the chaos of civilization felt after the eerie silence of the jungle. He moved quickly through the streets, keeping his hood pulled low, his thoughts racing. You and I are one now, the god purred. You are mine, and I am yours. Violence is in your blood, warrior. You cannot escape it. Ray rolled his shoulders, letting out a slow breath. Yeah? Well, I'm not worried about that shit right now. And you can call me boss now, he muttered, smirking slightly. For a moment, Tezcatlipoca was silent. Then came the laugh, low and guttural, like the growl of a jaguar. You amuse me, warrior. Ray's smirk faded. But don't mistake amusement for mercy. Ray ignored him. As he approached his father's building, unease settled in his gut. The door was cracked open. Ray's chest tightened. Inside, the apartment was a wreck. Overturned furniture, broken glass, papers were scattered, and the faint stench of spilled liquor lingered in the air. His father's old radio buzzed with static in the corner. Then Ray's eyes landed on something outside the open window, his father's hat. It was lying on the fire escape. Slowly, he stepped forward, bending down to pick it up. The moment his fingers brushed against the fabric, his vision lurched. Shadows twisted. Images flooded his mind. He saw his father lounging on the couch, sipping from a glass unaware. Then, noise outside, raised voices, movement in the alley. His father peered out the window, eyes narrowing as he spotted a group of cartel men pointing up at his apartment, murmuring among themselves. They were coming for him. Ray's father didn't hesitate. He slipped out onto the fire escape, moving with surprising agility for a man his age. As the cartel men burst into the apartment, he was already halfway down, his bare feet barely making a sound as he moved through the shadows. Ray almost smirked. Clever old man. He reached the alley, pulling an old ratty blanket from a nearby dumpster and throwing it over his shoulders. He hunched his posture, blending in with a group of migrants walking toward a nearby bus station, keeping his head low as the cartel men flooded the streets behind him, searching. Then, a van. It pulled up along the curb. Not cartel. Police? Army, maybe. Ray was confused. Before his father or any of the others could react, the doors burst open. Figures in dark tactical suits moved quickly, shoving people into the van with ruthless efficiency. A woman screamed, trying to fight them off, but they overpowered her easily. One by one, they grabbed the migrants, and when they reached Ray's father, he fought. A sharp blow to the gut sent him to his knees. Another to his temple dazed him. Strong hands dragged him forward. Ray's stomach turned. The last thing he saw before the vision faded was a sleek black L logo with the word Lazarus on the side of the vehicle. The present snapped back into focus. Ray staggered, gripping the window frame, his breath heavy. Interesting, Tezcatlipoca mused, his voice practically thrumming with excitement. I was expecting petty criminals, but this is something far more delicious. Ray ignored him, his grip tightening around his father's hat. Lazarus. He didn't know who they were or what they do, but they had his father. He was going to get him back, and anyone who stood in his way would feel his vengeance. Tezcatlipoca laughed. Ah, now you're starting to understand.